spent the last few months looking at the first 8 chapters of 1 Corinthians. And there's this stuff that I don't want to deal with, so we're going to stop. Now that we'll take a little break and look at the life of Joseph. And so if you want to turn your Bibles to Genesis chapter 37, the last several chapters of the book of Genesis are what's called the Joseph cycle. They cover Joseph is the primary character in those. So if you'll turn to Genesis 37, and I want to just read the first couple of verses to set the stage and to see if we can just thoroughly confuse ourselves here. So in Genesis 37, by the way, if you're not sure what Genesis is, first book of the Bible. The Bible is one book divided into 66 smaller books, and the first of those is Genesis, and big number 37, little number 1. So Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. Now, I want to stop right there because it just really gets confusing. So, Jacob falls in love with a young lady named Rachel. And he requests her hand in marriage, and her father says you got to work 7 years. So, he works 7 years so that he could marry her. On the night of the wedding, her dad gets him drunk, and he wakes up the next morning with the ugly sister. Literally, you go back and read it, that's exactly what happened. So now he's married to Leah. So he has to work another 7 years before he's allowed to marry the love of his life, Rachel. So work 7 more years for her. So he's married to 2 sisters, Leah and Rachel. There's no scenario anywhere in the Bible where these kind of arrangements work well. Now, the Bible records what happened, but that does not mean that the Bible always approves of what happens. In fact, sometimes people say, are there any lies in the Bible? Of course there are lies in the Bible. Every time the Bible records Satan saying something, he's lying. The Bible never lies. It always tells the truth, but sometimes the truth is what it's recording is this person was lying. And so it's not endorsing this kind of arrangement, it's just telling this is how it was. Now, that would be bad enough, but it gets more complicated because Leah, the less loved, less attractive sister, she starts having children, but Rachel doesn't. So Rachel finds there's enough of that. So she offers her servant to her husband because any children that the servant bears will actually technically be Rachel's children. So now we have a third lady involved, and then Leah quits having children, so she offers her servant to try to stay ahead of her sister, and then Leah starts having more children, and well, let's give you a chart. Here's a chart of all of there are 12 sons, and here are all 12 of them, and what their names mean, and when they're born, and who mom is, and what their names mean, and how would you like it if your family was the donkeys? That's the tribe of Issachar. So but notice we have, like half of them all come from Leah, and then we get Bilhah and Zilpah, who aren't technically wives. They're concubines, so it means they're the servants of the wives. And so we have 1 dude, 4 women, 12 sons, and a mess. That's what we've got, and that's the situation. So Joseph is out with his half-brothers from Bilhah and Zilpah. So the 5 of them are out. And look at the end of verse 2. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. The word report actually means to hear a rumor. In other words, the word we would normally use for this is gossip. He gossips about his brothers. Now, why in the world would he do that? Well, he wants to get them in trouble. Now, I'm well aware what it means and what it's like to be a brother. I have 2 brothers. I have a sister, raised 2 girls, 2 boys, and I understand that the relationship between brothers is an interesting one. And oftentimes there is antagonism that goes on in the family. And Joseph is the ultimate antagonizer. He's the ultimate get everybody else in trouble kind of guy. To just pick at them kind of endlessly. And so we sit right here. Joseph says, hey, you know what? I heard it said. Now, there's only one reason to tattle on them, and that is to get them in trouble. And so Joseph goes and says, hey, this is what I heard about those boys. Now, verse 3 says, now Israel. So wait, who's Israel? Well, Israel is Jacob. He said, what? Well, so Jacob wrestled with God, and he didn't die. And so he was renamed Israel. So Israel is kind of his nickname. Jacob is his name, and Israel is his nickname because he wrestled with God and prevailed. And how many of you have a nickname? so you can understand this. My name is Paul, but my nickname is Chicken Man. And there are actually people in our world who do not know what my real name is. All they know is it's Chicken Man. And so I totally get where he's coming. So they're just going to kind of use his name Jacob and his nickname Israel interchangeably. So Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons. Let me just say right here, this is really not the best of parenting. To love one child more than the others. I mean, we already got a problem because we have 2 wives and 2 maids. So, and they're all like, it's just crazy. And now we add in, I love this kid more than the others because he was the son of his old age. So what do you do for the kid you love most? And he made him a robe of many colors. And you may have a translation that says like a long sleeve tunic or something. We're not exactly sure what the Hebrew means, but we know exactly what's going on here, don't we? There's something special about this. Let me see if I can help us understand. Of all the sons, Joseph is the only one that gets an Xbox. See, now that you understand, like you get, that's what's going on here. Like Joseph's the only one that gets whatever this special code is that shows off that dad loves him more than anyone else. Now, this is going to cause problems with the other brothers, obviously, but sometimes we don't realize this causes problems for Joseph too. When you're pampered and you're loved more than all the others and you're treated more special than all the others, you kind of develop this idea that you deserve it. And so this is just really poor parenting all the way around. So verse 4, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. All right, so we have Joseph, and he knows that his brothers hate him. Now at this point, Benjamin is still very young, so really only it's Joseph and the 10 brothers because Benjamin's not really a part of the picture yet because he's still a baby. So Joseph's 10 brothers. So look what happens in verse 5. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, why did he tell it to his brothers? To antagonize them. Look at what he said. He said to them, look, it says they hated him even more. And he said to them, hear this dream that I've dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field. That means they're just taking the wheat and putting it in bundles. And behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, are you indeed going to reign over us, or are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. So notice the thing, they hated him. Then they hated him even more because of the robe. And they hated him even more because of, I don't know at what point you've kind of maxed out the whole hate thing. Like they hate him more, and then they hate him even more than that. So wherever it is, they're on the hate scale. They're getting a pretty high at this point because it keeps escalating. So now let's think about it. My brothers hate me. So I tell them this dream about how all of you are going to bow down and serve me. And now they hate me even more. So I have another dream. So what am I going to do now? See, it's an interesting thing. We should learn from our mistakes. We should. Matter of fact, I think we should learn from other people's mistakes because we're not going to live long enough to make them all ourselves. So Joseph has already made a mistake. He's already bragged to his brothers. Now he has another dream. You know what he really ought to do? Just be quiet. Not Joseph. Hey, guess what? I had another dream. But when does y'all bow down to me? It's mom and dad. Look at what it says. Verse 9, he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, behold, I've dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told it to his father and his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? So now, Dad, I just wonder if this kind of took a little shine off of Joseph at this point. Like this is the favorite son, and now he walks in and says, hey, Dad, someday you're going to bow down to me. And this is one of those places where I really wish we had like video. Like, did he just sort of say this, or there's a smirk on his face, or did he, kind of like, yeah. And I don't know. But verse 11, his brothers were jealous of him. So now they hate him and they're jealous of him. But his father kept this saying in his mind. Dad's like, I'm going to see what in the world is going on here. Now, if you've read the Bible before, or you've been to Bible studies, or there's a real tendency that we have when we read about people in the Bible to make them either really good or really bad. Like they're either angels or demons. They're either super saint or just super horrible. And we kind of silo everybody in the Bible that way. And so you may be thinking, Joseph is like one of the heroes of the faith, and our pastor just like ripped him from one end to the other. That's right, he's arrogant, pompous little twerp is what he is. And God's well aware of that. God's going to run him through some really difficult times to knock some of that arrogance out of him. So here's why I want to kind of help us with this a little bit. We have a tendency as human beings to do this everywhere. Hollywood does it. There's the hero, and then there's the evil, like they're just total evil. And the hero seems to never do anything wrong. They don't have a job, but they have plenty of money. And they're always smiling, and they're always sweet and kind to everyone, and everybody, just kind of, and the evil person's jealous of them and wants to be like them, and what's this called, Lifetime movie. So this is kind of what we have here is this idea. We want to pigeonhole everybody, and we do this everywhere. If there's someone we like, we just think they can do no wrong. And if we don't like them, we don't think there can be anything good about them. And it actually makes us angry to hear anything positive about the people we don't like. I'll give you an example. Let's suppose we have a far right-wing Republican conservative, and you say to them, from what I can tell, it looks like Barack Obama's a pretty good husband. Nope, he's evil. He's evil, and anything that he does is evil. He has to be a horrible husband, because there's no way that anyone like him could possibly have any single positive qualities, because they must be evil from top to bottom and everything about them. And then if you say something bad to Trump about them, oh, no. But the dude's had 3 mail-order brides. Like, in other words, we want to pigeonhole politicians as they're either good or bad, and that's it. The reality is, those people don't exist. Well, actually, some of the totally evil probably do. You're like, check. I run out of fingers. But most people are more like Joseph. Joseph is not perfect. Listen, in the entire Bible, there's only one person who's perfect, and they crucified him. So we need to be careful not to try to polish these people up as though somehow we have good, wholesome, sweet, kind Joseph, and we have these horrible, wicked, awful brothers, and that's what we have going on here. This is not Cinderella. And so Joseph he's a part of the problem. But I don't want you to think, well, if Joseph's like that, then maybe the brothers are good. Nope. So we find out that Joseph's not that great a brother. Now we're going to find out that the other ones, they're not that great either. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to them, here I am. So he said to him, go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, what are you seeking? He said, I'm seeking my brothers. He said, tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock. And the man said, they've gone away, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers, found them at Dothan. Now, this is extremely, why do we even need this? Like, what do we need to know about his travels? Well, here's why. So I have a map. Joseph, down with Jacob, his dad, at Hebron. He didn't have to go watch the flocks because he's the favored loved son. But some of the shine's been taken off because of this whole dream thing. So he said, I want you to go north to Shechem, and I want you to go find out how your brother's doing. Now, to get there, he would have to move through what's called the Central Highlands, and so his path would have been something like this. Now, he gets there, and he runs into a dude who knows his brothers, who knows where they went. This is called providence. The providence of God is when things just happen ordinarily in your ordinary life, but you see the hand of God behind them, which basically means everything in your life. And so this is the providence God brings me. He says, man, they went north to Dothan. So Dothan's a little bit north, so he would have gone further up the Central Highlands. You go, now why is this whole journey, why is that important? Well, here's why. He didn't catch a plane, didn't drive a car, and he sure didn't call for Uber. How did he get there? He walked. Now, throughout almost all of history, if you're walking through large areas where it's forested or there's no homes or no settlements or anything, it's dangerous. You just sleep on the side of the road at night. So Jacob just sent his son, the one who's beloved, on this dangerous journey to go all the way to Shechem, and then he has to have to go all the way to Dothan. That's why I'm wondering if Dad's like, yeah, I'll show him a little bit about this whole dream thing. But it is a very dangerous journey. That's going to be extremely important in what comes to follow, that we understand Joseph's by himself out in the woods, and he's traveling alone where it's very, very dangerous. So verse 16, they saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. I've given this a great deal of thought. Who do you think's the first one to say, let's kill him? I'm telling Dad. Like somebody has to raise the issue. So let's kill him. Let's kill him. Now, we've already seen they hated him, then they hated him more, and they hated him more. So I don't know how on the hatred scale they've gotten, but however high it is, it's high enough to have passed, we'll kill him. Like, that's how much they hate him. Let's kill him. Then they said to one another, here comes this dreamer. They have not forgotten what Joseph said. They're well aware of it. So they said, come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we'll see what will become of his dreams. Now, why do they say maybe a fierce animal? This is what we'll say. Because Joseph is traveling alone through dangerous wildlands for several days to get there by foot. So the idea of an animal finding him and devouring him is not outside the realm of possibility. So they go, they go, look, we got a legitimate excuse for him being dead. Verse 21, but when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, let's not take his life. Reuben said to them, shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him. By the way, what in the world is a pit? Just a hole where they would let water collect. So let's throw him in the pit, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. Now, why is Reuben wanting to rescue little Joseph? I mean, he's one of the sheaves that bowed down. He's one of the stars that bowed down. He's one of the brothers. Why would he want to rescue him? Well, Reuben was the oldest, but he has been disqualified from having the perks and advantages of being the oldest. So why is Reuben disqualified? Well, just a couple chapters earlier, in Genesis chapter 35, verse 22, we read this. While Israel lived in that land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. So he slept with his stepmom. Y'all are aware the Bible says that's wrong, right? So he's disqualified as being, so maybe Reuben's thinking, man, dude, if I rescued the loved son and I give him back, and dad finds out what happened, dad will restore me to like having the privilege of being the firstborn. Now I know you're surprised at this because nobody ever has their own interest in mind when they do something. So Reuben, again, it's like, oh, well, Reuben, he's the good guy in the story. No, he's not. He's just acting in his own self-interest. So Joseph, great guy. Yeah, check that one off. Don't think so. Reuben, yeah, check that one off. I mean, it just kind of, it's not going well. So verse 23, when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore. I'm guessing they enjoyed that. They took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it because the pit's full of water. And throw him into it, he's going to, drown. And so they toss him in here. Now, why do they do this? Because, man, they're vindictive. It's amazing what our anger towards someone will lead us to do. It's kind of like the lady that her husband had left her for a younger woman. And she's angry and hurt and depressed and frustrated and all the things that would come with that. So she's just walking along the beach, wondering, what am I going to do? How am I going to take care of this? Where am I going to go from here? That lousy scumbag and all that sort of stuff. And she sees a bottle laying in the sand. She picks it up and boop, out pops a genie. The genie says, you have freed me from my prison. Ask of me and I will grant you 3 wishes. However, for each wish, your greatest enemy will receive twice what you ask for. She thought, oh, not that scumbag ex-husband of mine. She said, is there some way? Genie said, I'm sorry. These are the rules, how it works. He says, fine. I want $1 million. Boom, there's $1 million in front of her. At the same time, her ex-husband has $2 million show up on the floor in front of him in his office. She thinks a little bit. She says, I wish for the most expensive necklace in the whole wide world. Poof, there's this beautiful necklace around her neck, and it's sparkling in the sunlight. And then she realizes scumbag's got one that's worth twice as much now. She's thinking, man, this is not right. I'm going to do something. So she thinks, and she thinks, and she thinks. And finally she says, for my 3rd wish, I want you to scare me half to death. Instead of, I think she's pretty smart myself, but anyway, instead of wishing for something to make the world better, or her life, she wasted one of 3 wishes to destroy someone else. Let me tell you, it may have worked out for her that way, but for most people, anger and bitterness and resentment are going to destroy you long before they destroy the person you hate and resent. And these brothers act this way because of their hatred and their resentment. So we have antagonistic Joseph. We have vindictive brothers. Now beginning in verse 25, we're going to see that they have opportunities, but they're not repentant. Now, let's just think this through. Let's just think. All right, so I'm one of the brothers. I hate little Joe. We strip his robe. We throw him in the pit. I know what I'm thinking. This is better than killing him because he's going to starve to death in the pit. He needs to suffer for a while before he dies, little punk. That's exactly what you're thinking. Oh, no, I forgot. Y'all are all holy. But anyway, that's the way most of us would think. He's going to down. He's going to suffer. He's going to be hungry. It's going to be great. Man, I hope it takes him weeks before he dies. That's what you're thinking. And then you look at your brothers and go, well, what do we do now? And somebody says, let's have a picnic. What? Yeah, let's have a picnic. What does it say at the beginning of verse 25? They sat down and ate. They just threw their brother in the pit. They wanted to kill him, thinking, we'll leave him in there. He'll die in there. It'll just be a longer, slower, more painful death. So what do? Well, let's have a picnic. You know, if you feel bad about something you've done, typically you lose your appetite. So there's no remorse here. They don't feel bad. Hey, let's celebrate. Man, I've got some potato salad. Let's have a picnic. And so they sat down and ate. I'm going to be honest with you, I just kept reading these words over and over and over again the last couple of weeks thinking, this is crazy. It's like freaky crazy. Like, who does this? These dudes. That's who does this. So they sat down and ate. I'm going to say it one more time. They sat down and ate. Hey, he's going to starve to death. Tell him what we're eating. Man, this fried chicken's good. Yeah, boy, that sweet tea. Oh, man, I'm just kind of upset because isn't that what you have at a picnic? Fried chicken, potato salad, yeah, wash it down with sweet tea, and have apple pie to follow. So there we go. So they sat down and eat. And looking up, they see a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum. Now this isn't gum like you chew. It was like a resin from the gum tree that they would sell. Balm and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. So they basically went back and forth from Mesopotamia to Egypt and would sell and buy and sell along the way. So they were traders for a living. Then Judah said to his brothers. Now, why is it Judah? Judah's now kind of the default leader. We saw Reuben, the oldest, he's out. His two brothers murdered an entire city of people. Simeon and Levi, their numbers 2 and 3. So the first three brothers are kind of out. So now we have Judah. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Let's make some money off this. Because that's what brothers do. Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Same thing, what's the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he's our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders, now who are the Midianites? Well, the Midianites are Ishmaelites. Well, Ishmaelites is their heritage, their culture, their ethnic identity. Midianites is the country they're from. So Midianite traders passed by. They drew Joseph up and lifted him up out of the pit. Now this is what I'm thinking at this point. If I'm Joseph, and my brother's just pranking me. Now, you may not have any brothers or sisters, but I'm going to take a wild guess at some point somebody's pulled a prank on you somewhere in your life. So Joseph probably, when they pull him out of the pit, they're thinking, yeah, they're just messing with me. They're just pranking me. And then when they sell him, I'm guessing he's thinking, maybe they weren't pranking me. So they pull him out, and they sell him. And notice what it says at the end of verse 28. They sell him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Now, why do we need to know how much they sold him for? Well, in Bible times, the basic cost of a slave was 30 shekels of silver. By the way, that's what Judas sold Jesus for. But these are business people. Now, if you're going to make a living, you need to buy for less and sell for more. Because if you buy more and sell for less, you're not going to be in business very long. So if they're going to sell him for 30, then they need to buy him for, let's say, buy him for 20. Now that you understand it's the way capitalism works. And so they buy him for 20 because they're going to sell him for 30. And where in the world are they going to sell him? We're going to sell him in Egypt. That's what it tells us. Verse 28 took him to Egypt. So verse 29, when Reuben returned to the pit, saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. He thought, oh, crud, man, now what? I'm not going to be number one anymore. No chance, it's over. He returned to his brothers, said, the boy's gone, and where will I go? Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, this we have found. Please identify whether not it is our brother's, but is it your son's? I think it's interesting they say your son. They don't claim him as a brother, just your son's robe or not. He identified it and said, "Is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Why would he think that? Because Joseph has been traveling from Hebron to Shechem. He's traveling in the woods, out in the wilderness, out in the wild, and he just assumed a wild animal has destroyed my son. That's why the whole journey thing makes sense. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "Nope, I will go down to Sheol to my son mourning. I'm never going to get over this." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Now, have you ever been in a situation where you got yourself too far down the road and you're thinking there's no way out? I can't get out. That's what we have here. The brothers have had several opportunities to get out of this. "Hey, Joseph, we were just kidding with you, man." Like they could have lied their way out of that one. "We're just pranking with you, man. Come on, eat the rest of the picnic with us." But now they've sold him. They've sold him, and they've sold their dad a lie. They're too far down the road now to get out. But you're never too far down the road to stop and confess, and then accept the consequences. You know what shocks me the most about this entire thing? No one cracked. Like nobody cracks. I mean, what do? They take people they suspect, they put one in one room and one in another and one in another, and they interview each one. Say, "Man, your buddy, he's not going to hold the story long. Hey, your friend, he's rolled over. He told us what really happened. Here's your chance. Are you going to stick with your story?" Like, we have 10 brothers, and none of them crack for decades. They keep up the lie with their dad year after. I don't know how they pull this off. Nobody can lie together that long. Somebody at some point is going to slip and mess up. Somebody at some point is going to think, if I tell Dad what really happened, I'll tell him I was against it, but the other brothers, they made me. You would think somebody. All of them hold the lie together year after year after year after year. They're too far down the road to get off the road. What they need to do was stop, confess, tell their dad what happened, ask God for forgiveness, and then accept the consequences. And sometimes you and I, this is what I tell people, look, if you're in a hole, quit digging. You're only going to make the hole deeper. Like sometimes you just need to stop, and you're going to have to accept the consequences. You're going to have to live with them. You're going to have to deal with them, but stop. You're too far into it to get, and they're too far into it to get out. Now I want us to think, what in the world does this whole passage teach us? Well, what does the last verse say? That Joseph was sold in the house of Potiphar, and Potiphar was an officer of Pharaoh. What does that have to do with any of this stuff with the brothers? Yeah, it said stuff for chapter 39. There's something far more important here. God is not done yet. The story's not over yet. God is still going to use the little arrogant, pompous twerp to do something great. See, one of the things we learn from this passage is God will accomplish his purpose. God has a plan, but here's the problem with God's plan. He doesn't tell it to you ahead of time.
Thank goodness.
Do you know how many times I've thought, God, what in the world are you doing? And God does not answer. But I know that God is in control. I don't understand what he's doing. I don't know why he's doing it that way. It makes absolutely no sense to me at all. But I know that God is in charge and that God will accomplish his purpose for his glory. And when your life is coming unraveled and terrible things are happening, you call the pastor. And you think, he's a pastor, he's a professor, I'll call Dr. Smith. Surely he has the answer. And I do. And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know why it's happening. I don't understand the plan of God ahead of time. But I do know that God has a plan. And that nothing and no one can stop God's plan. And even if his plan involves you being sold to Potiphar in Egypt, God will accomplish his purpose. Have faith in his plan. The second thing the passage teaches us is that God doesn't use great people. He's a great God who uses sinful people. That's why we need to be careful not to polish these folks up. Joseph isn't worthy of being used by God. God uses him anyway. God doesn't use super saints. God uses people like you and me. As a matter of fact, heroes in the Bible, they're marred. They're flawed. They're sinful. Because the glory doesn't go to what they have done. The glory goes to the God who has used them. We get this. We understand this. When you're ever talking with people, say, like, who's your favorite of Jesus' apostles? Most people say Peter. Nobody says Judas. Most people say, now why do they say Peter? Because we have more of Peter's mistakes than any of the apostles listed in the Bible. And we identify with him because we realize if God uses me, he's going to be using somebody who is sinful. All of our heroes in the Bible are flawed heroes. And so the great news for you and me is we don't have to attain to some level of spirituality before God will use us, because none of us are ever going to get there high enough to be worthy of God. Instead, God is going to use us even when we're flawed. Now, I know it does not look like that on Sundays. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Yeah, everybody says great, doing good. You know, I never, ever, ever on a Sunday have asked somebody, man, how you doing? Oh, it's awful. It's awful. My wife and I fought all the way to church. I tell her every week, pick out what you're going to wear tomorrow, have it ready so you can get dressed and we get there on time. And then she turned around and said, yeah, and if you could actually wake up and didn't have to go through the drive-thru and get coffee to get moving, we'd get there on time. It's your fault, you lazy bum. But we love each other because it's Valentine's Day. I mean, it's like none of us ever say that. Like nobody ever says, man, I'm telling you, there's some people I hate. How you doing today? How's your walk with the Lord? Man, there's some people I hate. I don't care about God today. I just want to see those people suffer. I just can't, you know. I mean, have you ever showed up at a church service, the pastor get up and say, man, I just don't feel like preaching today. There's some people that just have hacked me off. I'm in no mood to preach at all. Can we just go to the bullpen this morning? Like, no, we don't say that. Nobody ever says that because we kind of want to make ourselves look like we've got it all together. And I know better. There have been Sundays. Well, I just thought about calling Brother Kevin and said, Brother Kevin, it's all yours today, babe. Man, it's all yours. I just am in no spiritual. I mean, would it not freak you out? Actually, I have done this a time or two in my life. But would it not freak you out? Pastor Kevin go, look, I just don't feel very spiritual today. I don't feel like preaching. I don't like these verses. I got no sermon illustrations. So if I got to suffer through it, I'm going to make you suffer too. You'd be like, let's sing another song, please. But the reality is, these are the people that God uses. You know that every Sunday we have people that show up and teach Bible study during the first service and during the second service? Do you think every single Sunday they get up and go, yes, I get to teach Bible study today? I guarantee you, sometime in the next few weeks, they're not going to want to be here because they did their taxes on Friday afternoon. And they're in no mood to talk about how good God is. This is the reality is the people that God uses are people like us. We try to clean ourselves up and look better on Sunday, but the reality is we're not. We're all flawed. All of us. This is why the good news is the good news. Because we don't go to heaven as a result of our reaching something or achieving something. We go to heaven because we've been forgiven by Jesus Christ. And what makes God look so good is not when he picks out some super person, but when God picks out an arrogant, pompous little twerp and does something with him. Or murdering, lying, adulterous people. You do realize that all 12 of these guys, they're the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. These are the fathers of the people of God. And this is how we get introduced to them. Why? Because Issachar is not the tribe of godly people. It's a tribe of sinners who need to be forgiven. And Manasseh is a tribe not of great, wonderful leaders, but of sinners who need to be forgiven. I go right down the list. Like, can he name all 12? Yes, I can. But that's not the point. Here's the really good news. First Baptist Chandler is not going to impact the world because we're awesome. We're going to impact the world because we have an awesome God who uses tainted people. Sinful people. Nobody in this chapter is great except for God. And so take the stress off of yourself. Don't think, I can't be used by God because I'm not as spiritual as those people I see on Sundays. Because I did have a fight on the way. I did yell at that moron who didn't use their blinker this morning. So you're like, man, when he get off this, you're already feeling guilty. You ought to. That's what sin is. But we rejoice because we've been forgiven in Jesus. And God gets great glory, not by using great and wonderful and terrific people who could pull it off on their own, but by using people like Joseph and Reuben and Judah, Jacob. It's great news, isn't it? Don't wait to reach something before you can be used by God. Realize if you've been forgiven by Jesus, God can and will use you. And even when you're not perfect and when you fail, God will still use you. It's called providence. God will get his purpose across. He'll achieve it. This is y'all can smile. It's great. Don't leave thinking, never going to be used by God. Think, man, God would use someone like me. That's right. Because it's not about us getting the glory. It's about him getting the glory. And God gets a lot more glory when he uses just normal folk. Because it shows him off. That's what we want. That's what we're reminded of in this passage. None of these guys are good, but God still uses them. All of us are sinful, but God will still use us. Our Heavenly Father, help us not to pigeonhole people as either good or bad, and that's it, and the good can never do anything that's remotely wrong, and the bad can never do anything good or positive, because then we got murderers and adulterers and liars and slave sellers and everything else in here that's wrong and bad and horrible. And yet you're going to use them. And Father, we thank you that through Jesus Christ, when we're all of those bad things, and when we're angry, and when we hate, and when we're jealous, and when we lie, we do all this stuff that we see in Genesis 37, that you're still a God who loves us and will forgive us and will use us in ways that bring glory to your Son. So Father, I pray that you would help us to throw off the heavy burden of feeling like we have to be accomplished in our Christian life and have it all together and no problems and no stumbles and no difficulties before we can be used. But that you use flawed people. You use people like Joseph and Reuben, ones we see here in Genesis 37. So God, we thank you that it shows off how great and awesome you are. So Father, we again just thank you for the forgiveness that we have, the ultimate, total, and complete forgiveness that we have through your Son, Jesus Christ. For it's in his name that we pray. Amen.